The excitement level around Kyle Schwarber coming to Cincinnati feels like it's hitting a fever pitch, but it also feels like it's for the biggest reason, and that reason isn't even the most important one.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the country, and we are your Reds, your team every single day. And my name is Jeff Garr. I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I've been podcasting about this team for 7 seasons now, and I bring you takes that you can't get anywhere else about the Cincinnati Reds. Even when there's snow on the ground outside, that's all we talk about here on Locked On Reds is the Cincinnati Reds. And on today's show, I want to talk about why getting this deal done, Nick Krall probably needs this more than the fans need this. We'll talk about that in a little bit. In a few minutes, the rumors around this and the drama around this and the excitement around this and all of the things around Kyle Schwarber reminds me of something from about 25 years ago. But we will begin with why the biggest thing about Kyle Schwarber probably isn't the most important thing. And we're going to do all of that with my friend and yours, Mo Egger from ESPN 1530 and 700 WLW. Oh, how you doing, sir? And what you got for me?
Man, I'm doing well. Excited to be talking about the Reds. Excited that the Kyle Schwarber thing has kind of taken on a life of its own. And regardless of whether or not he signs here, it's a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun. It's made the offseason feel a little bit shorter. I know that there's been a lot of Reds fans, and I talk to a lot of my friends that like lead off conversations with, so has he signed yet? And things like that. And so it kind of feels like there's a lot of folks that are really excited about this. The thing that I worry about, and it keeps nagging at me every time I really get excited about this rumor, is the reason that we are the most excited about it, and the reason that people are reporting so much about it, even national reporters are talking about this, is because he's from Middletown. It has nothing to do with the most important part of a free agent, and that is the dollars and cents.
Speak for yourself. I couldn't care less where Kyle Schwarber is from. Frank, he could be from Middletown, South Dakota. I don't care. It's irrelevant. I guess there's two ways of looking at it. One, okay, whatever gets you in the door, right? So if what gets him in the door is the fact that he's from here, cool. Who cares, right? If that's what gets him in the door, if that's what makes it slightly more likely that he signs here, great. So it's not an irrelevant part of the conversation, but to me, the Reds need a guy who can hit home runs.
Yep.
The guy who's best at hitting home runs in the sport, arguably, besides Cal Raleigh, is available. They should be interested. They should be interested. Now, there's the dollars and cents. Here's my basic take. If the Reds want to give Kyle Schwarber a blank check, they probably can. They have 20 owners. They never go on capital calls to him. If they were like, you know what, screw it, we're paying the guy. We're gonna be the team that outbids everybody. We're gonna pay him. Do I think they could do that? Yeah. Now there's a difference between being able to afford something and having something in your budget. There's lots of things that I cannot afford. There are some things I can afford, but I'm just not willing to pay for, or I'm not willing to go outside my budget. The comparison that I made on the air, and it might not be the most appropriate one, I guess. I don't know. We have a budget. Family should have. My daughter, we have a budget. We budget for food, entertainment, expenses, household bills, whatever. We have a budget. Sometimes there are things that you find in life that you go, you know what, that's worth going outside my budget. For me, that was a Super Bowl ticket when the Bengals played the Rams, and I'm going. And so, it's going to be a decent chunk of dough, but this is worth it. This is a possibly once in a lifetime thing. I want to be there with my friends. If they win the Super Bowl, I want to be in the stadium hugging them. I want that. That was worth going outside my budget. Kyle Schwarber, you have to decide, I think, is he worth going outside your budget? Possibly worth going outside your budget. I think the answer is yes. Number one, he satisfies exactly what the Reds desperately need, which is a middle-of-the-order bat who can hit the ball out of the ballpark a lot, who can provide protection to the other hitters, who you could build the offense around. Also, we're not talking about a Reds team that won 64 games last year. We're not talking about, well, go get him because he's going to sell a bunch of tickets to a team to see a team that might win 75 games. I remember when the Reds, they've made they've had two somewhat splashy off seasons in somewhat recent vintage, 2018-19. They went and got Yasiel Puig. I don't think that was a move designed to get them over the top. They lost, I think, 98 games the year before. But it was like an attraction, sell some tickets, get people talking, make the team a little bit better. It was wanted to unload Homer Bailey. They got some other parts. Kyle Farmer ended up being, sort of valuable. But that wasn't a move where you're like, you know what? That could dramatically increase their chances of competing for something meaningful. This is. And so when you have that kind of player, and on his own, is Kyle Schwarber enough to take the Reds from what they were last year to a team that's going to win 98 games? Maybe not, but he can advance it. He can advance it significantly from what they were, which was a playoff team, to a team that doesn't need to play game 162 just to scratch and claw their way in. That kind of player. I don't care where he's from. He could be from Norway. Doesn't matter to me. That is the kind of player, when you are where the Reds are, that's worth going outside your budget, if indeed they do have to go outside their budget to go get Kyle Schwarber.
I feel like, because there's definitely, and I laid this out yesterday after talking about the Emilio Pagan signing, because that was what everybody was wondering. They weren't wondering, oh, hey, is he going to be our closer? They were wondering, does that $10 million now officially make the Reds too poor to sign Kyle Schwarber? And it's like, well, no, they could do a couple of different things, but you're right. And that's the part where I get into this, where it's like, this feels like the moment. And yes, you can buy into the locality of where he's from, but this is the moment that everything is combined. The success that you've enjoyed, whether you're talking about the ahead of schedule 2023 season or the playoff cameo that was last year, now's the time to go get it, because it's clear they got enough to get there. And then it's clear that there are a handful of teams that if they run up against those teams, they've got no business beating. But Kyle Schwarber gives you that business of beating those teams. So that's really where they've got to focus on this one, because I think it's intriguing that everyone is talking about it. Ken Rosenthal had an article that specifically addressed this rumor. Mark Sheldon had a headline that specifically addressed this rumor, and they were talking about it on MLB Network. They talk about it ad nauseum, but Greg Amsinger had the Reds at number 6 on their list. On the list of teams possibly could signing Kyle Schwarber, and Yonder Alonso about threw his microphone at him. He was just like, you're kidding. They're number 1 or number 2. They're the team that should be going and getting Kyle Schwarber, even more so than the Phillies. And I think that's the fun part about all of this, is that it seems to finally be lining up with wishes that I've had going into every offseason that I can remember. It's like, okay, where's the guy on the top of the list? And can the Reds go get him? No, obviously not. But why do we have to feel that way? Now we can.
So I guess there's a couple of different things. One for me is, if the answer is not Kyle Schwarber, what is? Who is? Right? We
go back to the quantity over quality thing, and I don't love that.
Right. I haven't met many fans who aren't in favor of this, but I know they're out there, and it's like, I don't know. It's a lot of money. First of all, is it your money? What? Why do you care? The greatest achievement in my lifetime as a sports fan has been how MLB owners have gotten fans to care about their finances. I don't spend it. Dude, I don't care.
I know it's real money, but it doesn't compute to me. So
okay, if it's either the Reds going too rich for our blood, or somebody who just doesn't think, hey, he's 32 years old, it's it's a lot of money. Cool. What's plan B? What else you got? What do you got that can replicate Kyle Schwarber? And what do you got that can take a lineup that at times last year had nothing that you could hang your hat on? They didn't get on base enough. They weren't good at manufacturing runs, and they didn't hit the long ball enough. What do you got that's going to take that offense and make it dramatically better? That's not Kyle Schwarber. So that's number one. Number two, if you're just going to step back and go, we're not doing this. We're not ready. What the F then have you been building toward for 5 years?
Right.
Legitimately, what the hell have you been building toward? This rebuild, this build, this started at the end of the 2020 season. right? Now, it kicked into hyperdrive a year later, but at the end of the 2020 season, COVID year, when they gave away Emilio Pagan, you knew, like, okay, they're going to start to hit the eject button. Kept pretty much everybody around for 2021, won 83 games, and then at the end of that season, Sonny Gray gone, and Eugenio Suarez gone, Jesse Winker gone, bottom out, lose 100 games, awful season. Okay, that's a long time ago. And so it's been a slow build, and the playoff appearance last year was tangible proof that the rebuild is at least kind of working. Maybe it's not working to the degree we would all like, but there's a payoff. There's a step. If now you're like, you know what, we're not ready to go all in with the roster, and we're a little bit too concerned about what we'd be paying the dude in 4 years, then what has been the point of all this? Then what has been the point of developing a core around which you build, right? That's what they've been doing. It's not, hey, we're going to start building, and then when we're good, it's only going to be dudes who are here now that are going to come through the system, homegrown guys. It's going to be, let's build a core. Let's build a group of. It's 2009 through 11, right? Let's get all these guys. Let's build a core, and then okay, what are we going to need? Cool. In 2012, it was we need a frontline starter, Matt Latos. Give up 4 dudes to go get him. We need a lefty out of the bullpen, Sean Marshall. Cool. Give up a future all-star closer, all-star starter to go get him. It's you know what? We need an outfield bat. Go get Ryan Ludwig, right? We'll pay to go get him. They even signed Ryan Madsen. But you developed that core, and then it was like, screw it, we're going for it. This, it's not maybe apples to apples, but if you're going to go, nah, you know what? Let's see if let's go get the dude, you know, the classic Reds offseason signee, guy who used to be good 3 years ago, and then he had the 1 year where he got a divorce, and then there was the 1 year he had a busted hand, and then he had a bad foot, he had plantar fasciitis, but they got some new orthotics, and you know, if you look at the underlying metrics against left-handed pitchers who have 3 vowels in his name, go get the best guy available. Yeah. Right, go get the best. Yes. I don't need Will Myers. I don't need Tommy Pham. I don't need Austin Hayes. Go get the dude. Kyle Schwarber is the dude. And if you're going to say no, then don't tell me you're that serious about winning. And don't tell me that this build, which has been going on for 5 years, had any point to it if you're not going to go for it now.
And that's why the pressure is so much on Nick Krall in this moment. That's why he needs this move even more so. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But I want to get back to the rumor side of this and how we're feeling about this, because this reminds me a lot of back when Ken Griffey Jr. was about to get traded here. There's one key difference, though, when it comes to all of this. The next time that you go to a live event, you've got to use Game Time. Steve and I use Game Time all the time, whether we're going to baseball games. If Steve's in town to go to like a Bengals game, or he likes to go to Buckeyes games, I like to go to Bearcats games, all the above. Game Time's got you covered for all of those. Plus, if it's last minute or if it's down the road, Game Time is a good option because you can even plan ahead for opening day, maybe the first game of Kyle Schwarber's Cincinnati Reds tenure, or if you want to go even further than that and look at the World Cup in June, Game Time's the place to go. Plus, it will help you find the perfect seat wherever it is that you go, shows you your view from your seat, and gives you the all-in pricing up front. They take the guesswork out of buying those tickets, whether it's today or whether it's 6 months from now. Check out Game Time today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you create your account. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off that first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Appreciate you making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. If you're not an everydayer, hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, because we're free and available everywhere you get your podcast, because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the country, and we want to thank you for helping us make that happen. All right, so Kyle Schwarber and the buzz around this move reminds me, and I was really just getting to the point where like I understood the movements of the offseason of baseball in 1999 and 2000 and things like that when it comes to the acquisition of Ken Griffey Jr. And I remember like on video games, he would be the first guy that I'd try to get on the Reds and all this other stuff. And so it was so much fun to see that happen in real life. And I had somebody ask me this the other day, and I've been thinking about it for a few days now, but they're like, is this just going to be another Griffey situation where they get Griffey and then they don't do anything else? Are they going to not build around him? I said, there's a huge difference here. They've already built around him. They just need him. And to your point about what you're talking about, like, are we, the Reds went after things back in 2012 and 2011 and things like that, where they acquired guys and they made the right trades and got the guys in to help them win the division, things like that. The only thing you got to give up here is money. Like, I feel like there's a key difference here in that Griffey was a big trade that you traded away a lot of guys for. Those moves that made the team as good as it was in the early 2010s required trades. This doesn't. And this can make the team so good and not, as everybody's always worried about with the Reds, mortgage the future.
So to me, the great difference between the Griffey acquisition, it'll be 26 years in February. It feels like yesterday.
I undercut it as 26 years ago.
The big difference is Ken Griffey Jr. did not address that team's biggest need. Now, that doesn't mean you don't acquire Ken Griffey Jr. Of course you do. And you pay the money and you try to build around him, and it didn't work out. But the 1999 Reds are a beloved team. It's also a team that didn't have very good starting pitching. And I was 22 years old. We would have these like knockdown dragouts over the offseason. My dad loved the Reds as much as we do. But we were so stoked about Ken Griffey Jr. And I remember going like, does he pitch? Because, God love Brett Tomko and Pete Harnish and Ron Vallone and Steve Paris and Denny Nagel was on that staff in 99. And I mean, that team won 96 games largely in spite of its starting pitching. They had a great year out of the bullpen from Scott Williamson and Danny Graves. So point being, Ken Griffey Jr., yes, you acquire him. He's junior, right? It's
right.
All-century player, first ballot Hall of Fame. Of course, you get him. But they didn't address even like their other big acquisition that offseason was Dante Bichette, another guy who doesn't pitch. Kyle Schwarber addresses their biggest need. Without question, their biggest need, and look, it's not to say it's their only need. They need bullpen help, and bringing back Emilio Pagan is fine, but is he the closer? Is he the guy you want in the highest of high leverage situations? And are you sure you have enough starting pitching depth 1 through 5? But he represents their biggest need. That to me is the difference. Now, the junior offseason, I remember like around Christmas kind of joking in 1999, like, okay, when? It wasn't if, it was when. Because Junior was forcing Seattle's hand. It was obvious what he wanted. It was obvious that, it was painfully obvious, like how this was going to end. It was a matter of when. Is it going to happen before the new year flips? Is it going to happen right before spring training? It was going to be Ken Griffey Jr. There's no sense of inevitability, but the excitement is comparable. He represents their biggest need. Had the Reds not acquired Ken Griffey Jr. for the 2000 season, I think, they did lose Greg Vaughn from the year before, and so somebody had to replace that bat, but it was like, still a pretty good lineup. We'll see, but you still would have had this massive, I think, issue with starting pitching. That's not the case, right? That is not the case. There's questions. Can some of these dudes who haven't been able to get through a full season healthy stay healthy? But like they're good there. They're in a good place there, and they're a good place with some of the other younger players they have. Their biggest need is a guy who can hit the ball out of the ballpark 45 times. Kyle Schwarber can do that.
This is what, and it's getting me fired up just now thinking about it. Like these last couple of years, I've kind of almost become a little bit more realistic than optimistic when it comes to this team. I feel like this would push me back into the just overly optimistic realm when it comes to the Reds, because like what we heard at the beginning of this offseason compared to what we're hearing now is that, well, the Reds are going to have to trade Hunter Greene, because how are they going to get better unless they trade Hunter Greene? You don't have to do that. You can just sign over some money and get Kyle Schwarber and keep Hunter Greene and still be really good. And you do all of those things with just the signing of a check. And I feel like that is where the importance with this lays. And it also makes me think too, like, I think a lot of this, and it's my own fault because sometimes I really should just get off of Twitter. But it has fed this, but it does make me wonder what would have happened back then if Twitter existed whenever Griffey was acquired. Like there's some things that back at the time, like I know Twitter is what it is now, and it's X, but I know that, a lot of folks know exactly what they're gonna get when they get on that website, but there's sometimes when it's cool and it feels like it would have been cool around that winter with Griffey, because right now it feels kind of cool right now too, because you have even the most pessimistic Reds fans on X right now that are like, boy, oh boy, if they get Schwarber, I might be excited about them again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's what it would do to the mechanics of the club, where it would give them, again, what they need, right? Which is a guy who has some pop. But it would also represent like a total narrative change. We're, I've talked about this a lot. Like, this is a chance for the Reds to kind of rebrand to a degree, but it's a chance to kind of rebrand, because there are a lot of folks, I think, even watching them last season make the playoffs, there's this hesitancy to really jump on board, because it's like, all right, this is nice, but it's not where it needs to be. Do we trust Nick Krall to make the necessary moves to get this over the top? Because I think this is the most difficult step. Kyle Schwarber is easy, right? You should sign him. Now, you can't hold him hostage. I mean, if he doesn't want to play here, then he doesn't want to play here. But
right.
I think what the Reds have done is not easy. But I think like the next step, which is go from a team that barely scrapes by to a consistent powerhouse. Nick Krall talked about it 3 years ago. Sustained success, right? No more peaks, no more valleys. Okay. Consistent powerhouse where you're winning 90 games almost every single year. You're challenging for the division title almost every single year. You're being looked at as a team that can make a deep playoff run every single year. Every single year. That's the biggest mountain to climb. This, Kyle Schwarber, would help you climb that mountain. So I think there's been, reluctance to really jump on board, because, okay, do we trust Nick, or is ownership really going to, sign off on the sort of moves that we just don't associate with the Reds? Here's a chance to answer those questions. The Hunter Greene thing, Jeff, you have folks who watch and you have folks who listen. So this is a visual, but I do this here. Okay. I have a piece of paper. I've drawn a line down the middle. Now you'll see one column. I have Hunter Greene and Kyle Schwarber. Okay. Because if you sign Kyle Schwarber, chances are, I'm guessing you're not trading Hunter Greene, which you shouldn't. Would you rather have this column here that has Hunter Greene and Kyle Schwarber, or this column here that's blank?
I would rather have the one that has Hunter Greene and Kyle Schwarber in it.
So, okay, trade Hunter Greene for what? For whom? What do you got? But okay, I mean, here, I'll put a question mark. There's a question mark, and then I'll put another question mark, because then I got to figure out who's going to be my staff ace, because Hunter Greene is still the staff ace. So you tell me, which one would you rather have? I have the reigning National League home run champion and guy who last year helped pitch the Reds into the playoffs. He didn't pitch well in the postseason, but helped pitch the Reds into the postseason, is a cost-controlled staff ace who's going to get a $2 million raise this year. Would you rather have this column, these two guys, or this column with the two question marks? I don't know, man. Question
playing a lot of
cool,
Mario Kart World, but I don't. Yeah.
I'd rather have this column with the Cy Young All-Star, the Cy Young candidate, former All-Star, and the reigning National League home run champion. And I'll tell you what, I'll take my chances, and you can have the two question marks. Little visual aid for you there, Jeff.
I always think of that clip from Family Guy whenever Peter's like, you are given an option, you can have a boat, or here's a box with a question mark on it. And his wife's yelling at him. He's just like, obviously take the boat. He's just like, Lois, I don't know. Like, this box could be anything. It could even be a boat. It's like, that's what prospects are. They could be anything. They could even be Hunter Greene. So you already have Hunter Greene. Keep Hunter Greene. And yes, the Kyle Schwarber of it all is so important to us as Reds fans, but it's even more important for Nick Krall. We've been alluding at it. We're going to tell you why it's so important for Nick Krall coming up next. First, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because there's no better way to get in on the action this NFL season, especially when you're talking about like live bets and things like that, than with FanDuel. I know, Mo, right now the line is at 5.5. I think last time I saw 5.5 over on FanDuel for 5.5 point underdogs for the Bengals as they head to Buffalo this Sunday. I don't necessarily know that I love that, but I think I might be all over the live line. Where are you at with that game?
I am taking the points. I'm getting points with Joe Burrow against a team that he has had success against, in a building he's had success at, against a Buffalo team that has issues with their edge rushers. Joey Bosa isn't going to play. There's offensive line problems. Buffalo's passing game has been inconsistent. Now, I'm not sure the Bengals can take away James Cook, but offensively, they're very healthy. You're giving me Burrow and a healthy offense with extra time to prepare. I will gladly take those points.
That's right. T's back. That's a huge factor as well. And you can get in on all of that over at FanDuel right now. The live bets will be hilarious with this one, especially if the Bills score first. I've been saying all week, if the Bills score first, that live line for the Bengals is going to look even better. So probably jump in twice on that one. That's all over at FanDuel. Download FanDuel today. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with us after the show is over. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs on Twitter. You can also follow Steve. He's on a boat somewhere. I think it's in the Caribbean. I forget. Like he went from one island and one ocean to another island and another ocean. And that's just how things go for him these days. But he'll be back next week. You can follow him at at S Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And you can follow Mo at Mo Egger. There's no Fs in that. All right, Mo, when it comes to this thing, like I feel like there's a lot of folks, and again, I've talked with a lot of friends of mine that are just like, man, we need this. This fan base needs this move so bad. The guy that needs it more than any of us fans is Nick Krall, because it feels like you kind of laid it out there in the first segment, and this is where I'm at with this. He was the guy that began this whole process. Like it began in 2020, but like he tore it down. He traded guys away. There were some folks that wondered what he was doing. And he really wiped the slate clean. And now he's been bringing in all these other pieces. But up until this point, he's done the Nick Krall thing where it's like, all right, we're going to sign this guy to a 1+1 year deal with like a club option. We'll see if he can bounce back. And if he doesn't, he's a free agent next year. And then we'll go trade for this aging veteran who, like we laid out earlier, he had a divorce. He has one leg and just got off a pirate ship somewhere, and now he's going to play baseball. But I think that this is the moment where Nick Krall can prove that he knows how to get the right thing at the right moment.
Yeah. I don't know if that is so much about Nick as much as it's about the people that he works for, giving him whatever flexibility he needs. Like what I don't know, what none of us know, is they have a budget. They have an idea of what they want to spend on players this year, and I think they have a decent idea of how they want to divide the money they're going to spend on players this year. If acquiring Kyle Schwarber requires them to blow that up, how willing are they? That, to me, isn't a Nick Krall question. Of course Nick Krall wants the Kyle Schwarber. You think Nick Krall's like, I don't know, man. Of course he wants Kyle Schwarber. So there's the mechanics of getting the dude, and at the end of the day, that's what people in his position are judged by, right? How do you build rosters? Well, again, if we're not going to build the team around a guy who hit 56 home runs last year, then what do you got, Nick? Right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, folks, I think if you asked most Reds fans, they would say the biggest question is financially, are they really willing to do it? Who knows what the market's going to look like? Maybe there are teams who are scared by the lockout. Or maybe there are teams who are, sort of put off by Kyle Schwarber's age and think, his best years are behind him. And so maybe the market comes back a little bit and it makes him cheaper to acquire. But if there ends up being like, a little bit of a sort of a bidding war here, and if Kyle Schwarber's like hometown discount, I ain't doing that. Like, is Nick Krall going to be told, dude, go get our guy? And I don't know. Would you be surprised if the answer was no? I don't know that I'd be stunned if the answer was yes, but I don't think anybody would just be floored if we found out like, well, the Reds tried, but there was only so far they would go because Nick was told, here's what you can spend. So that to me is the bigger question. Look, Nick Krall is ultimately going to be judged by whether this process that he helped start works. It has worked to a degree so far, but it only really works if they, I don't want to say win a World Series, but end up going to the playoffs on a consistent basis. And if they do, they'll eventually advance. And I think we'll all sort of look at it and be able to tell whether or not it was a success. And when we do, we're going to say either Nick Krall succeeded or he failed. this would help him succeed acquiring Kyle Schwarber, in my opinion. So can he get it done? And is he allowed to get it done? Is he allowed to go to whatever lengths he deems necessary to bring Kyle Schwarber home?
Because I think that there's two different feelings on Nick Krall. Like, I think we all understand, and we've talked a lot about this offseason, that his expectations are, all right, you have a budget, stick to the budget, and then whatever else happens after that is also important, but not as important. But to fans, the jury's still a little bit out on him. Like, is he doing the right things? Is he building the right team? All this other stuff. This would really push the fans toward the, okay, yeah, we got this. And I think too, like, even on the point of, it is on ownership a little bit, but I'm still looking at some of the projections and expectations for guys like Brady Singer as far as what they're going to make in arbitration or the deals that they signed before arbitration, and Gavin Lux and guys like that. If he made 2 trades, and if he traded Brady Singer for prospects and he traded Gavin Lux for prospects or a prospect, whatever that ends up being, and gets that money off the books, then he reopens up the possibility of, like, all right, if there really was just 20 million and you spent 10 million of that on Pagan, but then you open up another 15 to 18 million with those 2 trades, you've still got plenty of money to sign Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. There's ways to make it happen financially, and I say that without having
but
access
that's where
to
I
the
put
Reds
the
book.
onus back on him. That's where I put the
I think the fact that they're engaged in this process, that tells you there's at least some interest in doing what we don't associate with the Reds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is spend big money and maybe go outside their budget. But what we don't know is, does Nick Krall have carte blanche? Is he being given like marching orders? Dude, go get Kyle Schwarber no matter what. Or is he being given a directive? You can try to get Kyle Schwarber, but check with us before. But check with us.
It does
before
feel
you
like
give...
that's the
thing.
Yeah.
So like, and by the way, there's lots of GMs, understandably so, around the sport who you could say the same thing about. But
right.
Yeah, I guess what I would want to know, and where I think Nick Krall would be tested creatively, would be, okay, get Kyle Schwarber, now what? What else? Because it's not, hey, we got Kyle Schwarber. There's the team itself needs more depth. Like that to me is the hidden part of this offseason, where the last couple of years we've seen their depth get tested and it's failed almost immediately. Where it's, 2 years ago it was Mike Ford. We're going to go get Mike. We're going to Mike Ford. Couldn't make the team out of spring training. And then last year it was, the spin the wheel. Who? Blake Dunn. We'll try you. And Jacob Hurtubise. We'll try. Like, so to me, okay, go get Kyle Schwarber. But then, Nick, that's where you get creative. And that's where you're, turning over stones and finding hidden gems and guys who, make a lot of sense to acquire, but you don't have to pay them a lot of money. And their depth pieces. This team's depth this season has to be better than it's been the last couple of years. That is true regardless of whether or not they acquire Kyle Schwarber. So I put it more on Nick. Yes, getting Kyle Schwarber would help, but just on a macro level, how do you take what you did last year and make it? How do you win the National League Central next year?
Yes.
How do you
don't sneak into the wild card? Win the
how do you get a 1 or 2 seed? I mean, how do you win 95 games? How do you win 97 games? So Nick Krall, Kyle Schwarber could have a lot to do with that, but I'm more interested just when pitchers and catchers report and we kind of look at, all right, here's what they did this offseason. God, you know what? Nick Krall hit a home run. Or is it like, dude, what do we, it looks the same. It feels the same. Maybe it's a little bit worse. I'm more interested in, like, I could try to sign Kyle Schwarber. I'm a moron. But yeah, you want Kyle Schwarber, Mo? Yeah. Give me a bunch of money. I'll go get him. The more creative things he's going to have to do with the roster, with or without Kyle Schwarber, to me, will go a much longer way toward determining whether or not I think Nick Krall did a good job this offseason.
He is Mo Egger. He's got a show every day, 3 to 6, except for Fridays because Bengals.
That's why I'm doing this. I'm just there's my check it again. If you're watching on YouTube, just one more time. You tell me, Hunter Greene, Kyle Schwarber, or what's behind? I don't know my left from my right. What's behind door number 2? It's not.
ESPN 1530 and 700 WW. Mo, I appreciate you, sir. And we buried the lead. I mean, I did see that Noelvi Marte is now number 4. I am curious if Santiago Espinal gave him his permission to wear that number, but we'll never know that one. But thank you so much for joining me, and we'll definitely talk again. Hopefully, we'll talk again after the Reds sign Kyle Schwarber.
We'll do the podcast from somewhere in Middletown.
Ooh, yes, I like that. I think I'm trying to think, like Combs Barbecue would be a good one.
Is the Lakeside Inn still available? Is that still around, the Lakeside Inn?
Lakeside
what about
Inn. What's
Bristol's?
the name? There's a Bristol's, yeah.
Right off I-75.
Start marking places on your maps. We'll see if we can meet you there. Thank you so much, Mo, and thanks for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. Now make sure you check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered every single day. Views around the league. He was there, history-wise, whenever Kyle Schwarber made his way into the league. Of course, we all were, but he was also there whenever Ken Griffey Jr. made his way into the league, and he was there whenever the Reds won their first World Series as well, because he's seen it all. That's all over at Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, and the #1 sports podcast network in the country. Until tomorrow, you know that we'll be Locked On Reds every single day.
All right, we do okay?